Hello friends, welcome back to the channel and thank you for joining me today for part 9 out of 12 of my near-death experience compilation. Today we're going to be hearing from multiple near-death experiencers on this topic, the truth of who we really are. If you'd like to connect with any of my guests, I will have their names displayed on the screen as they are speaking, and I will have each of them listed in the description box with their contact links. If you'd like to connect with me, you can also find my links to my social media in the description if you'd like to support this channel. Thank you for watching. That helps out a lot just by itself, but my Patreon link is also in the description box. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy.
I was shown the expansiveness of the universe. I was it all. Everything existed, has always existed, was within me, and always has been. I've always been connected to it. There was no separation. Everything was one, and I was a part of it. I was a holographic part of the one. It was so beautiful and indescribable to see that I was the expansiveness and the oneness. There was no separation. There was no separation between me, anyone, anything. I don't want to say a web, but it's an energetic web of existence that we're all immersed in. And we're just unaware of it, like the fish in the water. And we literally can tap into it and merge with it and feel held by it.
My understanding when I was in the afterlife the first time was that I was done. I wasn't coming back. And I went through the transition, reawakened to the knowledge that I am source. And so are you. And so is everyone else. And that is also a hallmark of an afterlife experiencer. They get the information that, God isn't some, being out there separate from us. We collectively are part of God. Who are we? We are mental characters within Source's mind. Kind of like how an author has book characters. And some authors will write books about the same characters over and over, and then they'll switch to new characters, or they may have different characters in every single book. But they keep all those characters' personality traits in mind while they're writing. Well, we're like book characters in Source's mind, and Source keeps us all in mind while we're out there living what we think are separate lives. So we are characters within Source's mind. We are literally part of Source's consciousness and self-awareness.
Sometimes people have made the analogy that when you look at the sky, there's clouds in the sky, but there's clear, bright light above the clouds. That's not really true, because we are that light. So we are looking at a sky with clouds in it, deluding ourselves into thinking that we are deluded, that we are having our vision obscured, that we have to go out there to see the light. It's not out there, it's in here. In Christianity, the saying is the kingdom of heaven is within you. Now that is absolutely true. That's where you look. You look inward. You don't look outward for anything. You look inward. It's all here. It's all here in your heart center. This is who you really are. Now, when we look outwardly and we imagine all sorts of things and we believe all sorts of things, that creates obstructions. Because now we're thinking that we have to look out there for the light. But if we just realize that we've never left the light, we haven't fallen from heaven, we haven't fallen from grace, we haven't become something dark and hideous, we are the light. We are love and light. It sounds a little bit like a cliche in some circles. Everybody says love and light, but it's true. That's who we are.
And then another level opened up. He goes, I want to show you who you really are. That was really important. It was not what you were, it was who. It was you, who you really are. And it opened up again, right? And here I am. And this was God. Now, when I use the word God, it's like saying bark and you hear dog, right? Or bark and tree. Okay. I think there's a better name for God. It's in the Bible. I don't have any idea where, but I read it one time. That's perfect. God refers to him, herself as I am that I am, right? I am that I am. That puts it into a verb instead of a proper noun. So when I say God, I mean I am that I am. And so here's what that looked like, kinda. Except that there's no space, but it's like, imagine, Melissa, you're the Hubble Space Telescope, right? You're up there in space and you're focused in on this galaxy. Except this is not happening in front of me, it's on all levels, right? Everywhere, and it's infinite. And you know how when you look at a picture of a galaxy, it's like tiny points of light everywhere. And they're all swirling around one another to this intense white glowing center. It was kind of like that. And I was one of those points of light. And it was like an infinite number of them. And each one of those points of light was like every TT fly, every wombat, every human being, every rock who had ever lived, they were these points of light. And I was one. And we were all connected. This was one thing. It was I am that I am. And I had all of the potential. It helps me to close my eyes sometimes. So I had all of the potential and power of God. And yet I was still me at the same time. But I wasn't Ray the ego. I was the core essence of whatever, the soul, or I mean, it's different. We were all connected, and this is the most exquisite part. This really blew me away. I was 9 years old. There was music. We were singing, for lack of a better word. It was worship. And this kind of music makes music as we know it, like, doesn't even compare. It was alive, and you could inhale it and smell it, touch it. The music, we were worshiping, we were singing, and the song was, we love you. That's all it was. It was all love. It was absolutely intoxicating. Somehow I am that I am, told me that it's not my time and I had to go back.
I think that those are, I've always attributed it to being, all those fragments of light were individual souls that were interconnected and creating the greater oneness of light. So that's how I perceive God. That's how I perceive the oneness. And talking to other spiritual leaders, that's, to me, when you hear people talk about the one, that's it for me. We have a fragment of that light with us, but not the totality of our light. Now I'm talking about our individual light, our fragment of light. We come into life and we have a portion of our light with us, and that's what connects us to the greater light. And so and that gives us, you've heard people talk about the golden cords and things like that. Well, because within us resides a part of our light, then we have access to the greater whole. It's just we have to learn how to open that doorway to connect to our higher consciousness, our higher self, which is basically the totality of our light fragment of who we are. And so I believe, yes, and because our light is interconnected with all of the light, then yes, we are, God is a part of us. We are a part of God. And it's a wonderful thing to come to recognize. It took me years to recognize that's what that was, because I fought it for a long time.
I remember looking at it, walking by the beautiful trees, which of course I always felt were beautiful, but I'd never seen them to be this beautiful, like with a capital B. And I for whatever reason, I didn't put it together that what I was experiencing was God. Was the kingdom of heaven, because in my experience at that time, to say the Judeo-Christian religions, which were more predominant in Wisconsin and the US, was that they tended to think of the deity as some like far away sort of thing, or big guy in the sky or something like that. There was never the sense that people were having immediate experiences of it, say through a tree or through a model, anything. And so I never put those together. But what I was experiencing was just, oh my God, I'm being I'm basking in the love of this tree right now, basking in the love of looking at a lawn of grass and clover and bees and birds and all of those things. I could feel with them the same resonance that I was brought into in that NDE.
I grew up reading the Bible, and Moses encountered a burning bush, and he said, "Who's that?" And it said, "I am that I am." To put it in a very personal context, I was so frightened that here's God, behind me, and he's holding me. And when those arms came around me, and you quoted that so well, it felt as if we all became one. In fact, it felt like I became God. And that was so difficult for me to say. And for years, but I became that. And I even asked that question, like, who am I? And that's when the phrase came, I am that I am. And I realized, oh, I am that I am. I'm part of that, and that is part of me. And as I said, it's a personal experience, but in that flash of enlightenment, if you will, I thought, wow, not only is my little boy a beautiful manifestation of all that love, I'm a beautiful manifestation of all that love. And therefore, all of us, each and every one of us in our own unique way, is a perfect, profound manifestation of that love, of that light, of that divinity that I am, that I am. And I grew up with Jesus, and I still love Jesus. I love what he taught, but I saw it differently. Suddenly it wasn't about, Dad's favorite who came to show us how good he was. Suddenly I realized, wow, that was what Jesus was teaching. Walk on the water, Peter. Why do you doubt? He was holding up a mirror saying, can you not see your own divinity? Can you not see that I am that I am? And so are you. I mean, there's that profound passage where the apostles are with Jesus and they say, well, show us the Father, and then we'll know what you're talking about. And this shifted for me, because I used to think of this differently. And he said, if you've seen me, you've seen that. And there's all kinds of theologies around that. Oh, well, he was the Father. He was God in manifest. But I think what he was saying is, don't you realize we're all manifestations of that? If you've seen me, you've seen that, because if you go look in the mirror, you'll see that divinity. We are a manifestation of the divine. So gosh, love each other, take care of each other. And that's what he went on to say. This is the commandment, love each other. That's how people know. And so I'm like, oh, wow, that's different than I used to think about it. But it opened up a whole new reality to how much love there is, and how much a part of it we are individually.
I was in the middle of this great dark ocean, and I was content, and I felt like I remembered who I was. This is me. This is who I am. This is my true self. How did I spend all those years not knowing this? How could I be so blind as not to see the trueness of myself as this being? And I could see that I was much larger than I was on earth, much larger, but I didn't have any matter. I was in nothingness. There was no thing there, nothing. I'm in nothingness, and I say that because it's an emptiness. It's an emptiness that's paradoxically full. So it's a darkness that's light. It's an emptiness that's full, and I'm by myself, and I am unafraid. Did I know where I was? I knew who I was. I knew who I was, and that was enough for me. I hear my name called. I hear not Peter, because I am not Peter. I hear the origin of my soul, the calling of my soul into being. I sense that I am known and that I am created, and that I can see the origin of myself, and I describe it as a photon that's superpositioned and wave and particle. So I can see my origin of myself, and I'm superpositioned. I am a limited singular photon, and next to me, right next to me, are a trillion, bazillion, gazillion, all the photons and all the universes all in one place, and they are gigantic. It's like this huge wall of photons out of which I come, and there's this unitive field. The quantum unitive field of, and now I'm going to be macro, micro of photons. I know that that's not true because they're quarks and I get all that. Sorry. So, but I am a separate. I'm a quanta of the quantum, and the quantum field is ginormous, and I am both part of this thing, made from this thing, and yet limited and separate from it. And I am also, I'm superpositioned because I can see myself inside of the oneness of being. I can see that I'm part of this. I can see that this is the creator who created me, but I also can see this long tail of my soul. I have my own quantum field, and my own quantum field is contained over eons. And in my field, I see other lives that I'd lived or am living.
There was a moment when I asked the beings of light, people were talking about high frequencies, low frequencies, the frequency. I'm like, okay, explain this frequency thing to me. And then is when they said, it was beautiful. The answer said, there is only one true frequency, source frequency, God's frequency. Mm-hmm. Whatever you want to name it, the creator's frequency. And I'm like, so, okay, explain that with more clarity. And then they gave me an analogy that was amazing. So they showed me like a lamp, say like that, and say it had a bulb that is on. So you are that light. What they were saying, that you never stop being one. You are that. You are the wholeness. You are the totality. So when you think you're dissolving, in reality, you're becoming your wholeness of who you are. Mm. See? You're not just an aspect of you. You are all of it. And we always are. See? So then showing me, look, this bulb is on. What happened when you put a shade on it? You start diminishing that light. That's the independence that you think you're having, that you are separated. See? And then they show me what happened when you put more and more and more shades on it. So look, I like to keep this cloth. What happened if you this shiny light, this bulb that is on, and you put this on, and then another layer on, then another, then another, then another, until all these layers, which is conditioning, belief system, experiences, ideas, ancestors, all of that what happened until you stop shining your light. You're shining your light really low. Your voice become really quiet. You cannot hear because you're under all those layers. See? But that doesn't mean you stop being the light. You are it. Always have been. You always are whole. You are source. You are the totality. Then what is the work? Start becoming aware. All these layers. So the moment you bring and invite awareness into your life, you start dropping those blockages. You start blocking those, like dropping them, dropping them, dropping them. What is high frequency? When you have dropped more and more layers, what you do? You connect. Now you're part of the whole. That's why you can talk to beings of light, with the spirit world, with the minds of others, because there's only one mind. There's only wholeness. There's only totality. So yeah, now high frequency, you're connected. Low frequency, a lot of layers, you're disconnected. That's why when you drop the layers, you can hear. Now you're part of it. You open the canal.
I think that light is actually part of God, a part of our Creator, that is within everything that God has created. And so each of us have a bit of that light within us. And although here, when we look at someone else that we encounter, we don't necessarily see that light like I saw it emanating from everything that I saw on the other side, it is that element of life. And it is that spirit that is our total unique self. And one of the things I've come to believe too is that one of the reasons why I was able to fully remember my experience, even when I was in that recovery room in the hospital, but at the same time, my brain consciousness was muddled and couldn't even remember what had happened to me in the surgery. I think that's because that light within me is the consciousness and the self that is eternal. And that the consciousness that our brain interacts with is a totally different consciousness. And that we have within us both kinds. And so we always have that spiritual consciousness as the light within us, while we also have a human and brain consciousness that operates through our brain. So it's kind of hard to put into words, but it is that that light, that spirit, that's the eternal consciousness, is what we ultimately are eternally.
Now, in the Catholic Church, the thinking is you are made in the image and likeness of God. Okay. In my experience, we are a direct connection from God. In other words, everything we experience, God experiences. And I think God wanted to know it's God's self in all ways. And we provide that. So it's a journey, you know? And one of the things that I learned is that heaven is here. It's not there. That's going home, and that's wonderful, and that it is the best. But we can create heaven here. We can also create hell here, and we do.
On the other side, doesn't really matter. It's just an experience. It's just perception. So what we consider, oh, that was wrong and that person was wrong, it's a joke. They were playing a role. They decided to be Napoleon, so they were Napoleon. So they did what Napoleon does, war and all kinds of other stuff. But when that role is finished, guess who they are? Love. Their soul.
If I were to just say, there it is, that would be a finite infinite. And so the other side is everywhere. It's all inside of us, all around us. but it starts with really going inwards to that place, and it's personal, it's micro, it's macro, it's the all, but it's a journey within. And I think all expansive journeys start that way, really going within. I mean, if you look at Buddha, for instance, he was living a life in which it was predicted that he either had two paths of him, outer success or inner success, in which he really enlightened people and you go into the light, right? That's where that comes from. And living a life as Siddhartha, he was quite unsatisfied with a wife and I think a kid, and it wasn't enough, that outer life, and he really sought out and left that life behind, and he connected to a beautiful place within, and he found that true peace. He found nirvana, all that stuff. And I think really it's from finding the world that we're holding on to that's so fleeting and temporary, from losing that, right? We were able to find something else. And that's what happened with my body, with my ego, with my identity. From able to lose a temporary identity as 3-year-old Jake in this body, I was able to open up to myself that I was just so much more than this body, than this lifetime, than this dimension. And so I think that's all the paths of all expansive journeys, losing what you're holding on to as a part of your identity, to allowing yourself to open up to expanded awareness and looking at the world through a bright eyes of the child, so to speak, with infinite curiosity, expansiveness, and just understanding that there's no end to who we are, that we're limitless. And I think that's a beautiful part, that we don't have to wait to heaven to create it. We are not just here to create heaven on earth, but we are literally parts of heaven here on earth.
That whole love, teaching that I was given was really beautiful. And I did put a lot of it in my book, Awakenings from the Light. The crystalline structure really started when, my teacher was trying to teach me about what divine love was and how big it was. And so she showed me kind of like in the sky, sort of a projection on the sky of, that divine love being a giant diamond or a giant crystal. And that's this huge, universe of divine love is like a giant crystal. And each one of, when we love someone here, or when we have love for, our pets or family members, or even the divine God, that's like one facet on this entire, universal kind of crystal. But I was also shown kind of a representation of what that divine love looked like in that structure. So she said, like you just described, the structure of heaven is built on love, but also the structure of this earthly realm is also built on love. The physical is built on that divine love. And she showed me this kind of a vision of what that looked like, kind of down at, I think, like the nano level, like the really tiny, minuscule level. And it really looked like almost like a crystal. So if you were to take, I don't have any crystals here with me. I'm a geologist, by the way, so I've got rocks all around me. But if you look at like a quartz crystal or something, and you were to zoom in on it and zoom in on it and zoom in on it with like an electron microscope, you'd see each crystal has a very regular pattern of what we call a crystalline lattice structure. And it's what it is are energy bonds of all the different little atoms and molecules within that crystal. So like if there's two, atoms here, they bond themselves together via electromagnetic force. But what she showed me was that electromagnetic force that forms the lattice work of crystals here, you can think of that as the lattice work of the entire universe, not just this physical universe that we perceive of as physical, not just that spiritual part of the universe, but all of it. And it looks, everyone is connected to everyone else in this lattice structure via these, that divine love energy. It's that energy of divine love that binds us all together, and it forms like this regular, to me it looked a little bit cubic, but it was actually not three-dimensional. It was multi-dimensional. And I knew it was more than 3 dimensions because it wasn't looking exactly 3D to me. And I've done a lot of geology work and I've done a lot of crystallography, and I could tell that what I was seeing wasn't 3 dimensions. I found out later from one of my readers, because I had described this lattice structure and all of those energy bonds that go back and forth, not just amongst all of us, but just in general that make up this universe around us. And it turns out what I was seeing was either 8 or 9 dimensional. It wasn't 3D. I was experiencing it as a 3D person, as 3 dimensions, but it was actually 8 or 9 dimensional. And to me, they both look very similar. So I can't distinguish them from, this physical body, but it was definitely an 8 or 9D geometry that I was seeing kind of projected into a 3-dimensional awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that it was like a multi-dimensional spider web, but the spider's webs were of energy, and it was that energy of love that connected us all together, but not just as people. It was also the rocks, the trees, the animals, the planets, the stars, everything, not just humans. And that was like a big revelation for me. Like, whoa, wait a minute, we're connected to all of it.
There's a part of us, I feel like, that is a part of something bigger, and we can call it a God. I absolutely do not believe from my experience that I created the oneness that I was in. I would be so incredibly naive to think that, because it was so big. I was just a drop. I was a drop in this oneness. And so because I was a drop, that meant that everybody else was a drop too. But all together we made this ocean of oneness that was in this void. But I felt very strongly that if any one of those drops didn't exist, then the entire void God oneness would not be able to exist. And so we are all, even though we can feel so small and inferior compared to something as big as the idea of a God or this oneness that I was in, even though we can feel so small in comparison, we are absolutely integral. It would be as if a single cog on a gear didn't exist. That gear couldn't work no matter how many cogs there were. It needs every single one of us. And we are all part of this together, which makes us all vitally important and worthy and part of this loving God source oneness that is out there, that we're all a part of.
It's just like my heart was just expanding for the love of everything, because that's what that golden light is, just this pure love which is everywhere. And I understood that it's actually everywhere, all around us right here now, in the physical. It's everywhere all around us, and it's inside us. And but we're so cut off in the world. We don't realize how amazing we actually are, made of love and held together by the love. And it's so the beauty of it supports everything, and like there's no fear at all. There's no shame, no horror, no suffering. It's ended. There is nothing else except this divine, beautiful, golden love. And it just breaks my heart to be in the world and see so much suffering, knowing what we are capable of, you know, that we can actually contact this love to help others and to also enhance our own lives in the most wonderful and kindest way possible. And you don't have to do anything to get that. You can just kind of realize it in your mind, in your heart, and allow it, and have some faith that it's actually real.